Chills, thrills, and blood spills presents the Zodiac Killer Explained. His kills and his psyche. Please do like, share, and subscribe.
5. That is the number of kills he is officially credited with, though he claimed responsibility for 32 more. A trail of blood, ciphers, tears, fear and destruction. Half a century of sleepless nights. He was not the most gruesome, and he may not have been the most prolific of killers. But he has never been caught, and the human brain cannot stand incompleteness. That is why the Zodiac Killer still holds our attention today, a role reversal from 50 years ago, when he held my attention instead, a rookie intern at the San Francisco Chronicle.
This was too easy, I thought to myself as I saw the young couple sitting in the car. The gun would probably make a fair bit of noise, but it was a rather isolated parking space, and it was pretty close to midnight. I decided to take my chances. Walking up to the car, I switched the flashlight straight on their faces. They barely had time to register shock before I started shooting. 5 rounds of bullets, and they fell back like puppets whose strings had been cut. In the Bay Area, people were dropping like flies, yet there didn't seem to be any panic. I can't have been that insignificant. Was my work really that invisible? If the police weren't going to take any action on their own, I would make sure they did. I went to a nearby store to buy some pens and stacks of paper. It was time to write some letters. As I left, I glanced at the name of the store. Zodiac.
I had thought that being editor of a national newspaper was stressful, but this was the time to truly panic. I watched him, my immediate boss, call up the editors of the Vallejo Times-Herald and the Examiner, and it was official. We had a potential spree killer on our hands, if the contents of the letter were true.
Once I had decided to kill, the young couple never really stood a chance. As I approached them, they looked at me with surprise, which quickly turned into shock once they saw my gun. With the threat of the weapon, it was easy enough for me to convince the woman to tie up the man. Then I tied the woman up. They thought it was some kind of attempt at robbery. Little did they know. Then I began the stabbing. The unfortunate cab driver had almost no idea this was going to be his final few moments on God's green earth. I almost, but not quite, felt sorry for him. I asked him to drive me to Presidio Heights. This was the easiest kill of all. 1 shot to the back of the head, and he was gone. I wanted to mess with the police, so I took the driver's wallet, cab keys, and ripped off a piece of his blood-stained shirt. It wouldn't be long before the police thought this was a basic robbery gone wrong. Not until I corrected them.
The Zodiac's letters had always been cryptic in nature and almost taunting in their tone. But this one seemed especially absurd. He rambled about slaves in paradise and how he was too clever to be caught. What caught my attention, however, was the threat of a bomb, something he called a death machine. If he did follow through, the consequences could be catastrophic. Nothing came of it, however.
It has been a year since the police first caught wind of me, and yet a year later, they are no closer to catching me. They are honest people who do a good job, but they are not very clever. The Bay Area is in a state of constant terror, and I chuckled to myself at that thought.
I was on my way to visit my mother, my baby right next to me, when I realized the car behind me was flashing its headlights rather urgently. I stopped, and a man stepped out of the car. He told me that my right rear wheel was wobbly and offered to fix it. I was rather glad of the assistance. As soon as I entered the highway, the wheel came off almost immediately. The man had an apologetic look on his face as he offered to drive us to the nearest gas station in his own car. The next hour and a half were utterly terrifying. We passed several stations, but he just kept driving on, further and further away from the city. I sat petrified, clinging onto my baby in the back seat. Eventually, he had to stop at an intersection. I was ready. With my baby safely clutched in my arms, I jumped out of the car and ran for the nearest field. The man promised me he wouldn't hurt me, but nothing was going to make me go back into that car. Eventually, I could hear his footsteps receding and sighed in relief.
It had been 4 months since the near kidnapping of the mother and her baby. The police, as usual, were useless, so it was time for me to set the record straight and claim credit for my own work. It was time for another letter.
It was Zodiac again. Almost 3 years after his last letter. I was now no longer a green rookie and on my way to becoming editor myself. This one talked about The Exorcist and how he didn't think it was satirical enough. The methods were familiar. If we didn't publish this letter, he threatened to do something drastic, though he had never followed up on those threats before, not to our knowledge. All these years, there have been suspects who were thought to be the Zodiac, but none of them stuck due to that small matter of lack of sufficient evidence. Would you like to know who these people are? I would love to tell you, but as the saying goes, my friend, that is a story for another day. This is an original story by Chills, Thrills, and Blood Spills. If you like the story, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this.